Welcome, everyone, to a Brand Fortress HQ podcast. On this Tactics Tuesday, we're going to be discussing Amazon Connect and UGC. So I'm going to actually start out with turn it over to you, Mike, and let you share a little bit about how you guys have been using Amazon Connect recently and how you've kind of changed your strategy from some of the other times or tests that you've done with Amazon Connect over the last 6 months.
Yeah, so Amazon Creator Connections is for anybody who's listening and doesn't really know, because it's not like they heavily promote it. It's on Amazon Seller Central. You can log into Creator Connections. It's under your brand. I believe it's under your brand section, and it's an opportunity to connect with creators, most of whom are Amazon influencers, but also have their own, profiles on other platforms, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, whatever. Some of them are not. Some of them are just bloggers and things like that utilize Amazon Associates. And so what you do is you create a campaign in Creator Connections, and then Amazon puts that campaign out to their influencer network, and you can filter. You can say that I only want creators in these categories or things like that. And then they will then respond back. They'll apply to the campaign, and then you can connect with them. So you could get UGC from them potentially. They will post, generally speaking, if they're influencers that are doing, video reviews, they would post those typically on Amazon, but also on their own profiles. And then it runs through an Amazon Associates link, but also I think there's a separation from talking to some of the influencers. I don't think it's all the same. They can run it on the influencer platform, or they can run an associates link. I don't think they're exactly the same from what I'm gathering. And but anyways, that's the idea behind Creator Connections. And we've only done 2 campaigns. We ran one campaign back in August of last year. And we were kind of dipping our toes. We didn't really know what to expect. And our brand is one that's not super social media friendly. So we really haven't pushed on that side too much until this year. We're really kind of trying to make a push on that now. But so we were dipping our toes in. So we created a campaign, which was a very low budget. Like I said, $1,000 on the budget. And the budget is for the commission. So essentially what happens in Creator Connections is you are allocating an additional commission above the Amazon Associates level commission. So if they're getting, 2% or 3% on a sale, you would then be offering an extra, 10% or 15 or 20, whatever you decide, so that they can stack. And so when you create the campaign, you say, what is the bonus commission that you're going to pay? What's the budget? And the budget would be, so if somebody sold a $100 item and you were paying a 10% commission, you just spent $10. So if you've got $1,000 budget, $10 into 1,000, that's where that budget's being allocated to. And so you would set the budget, you would set the percentage, and then you set the time frame. How long does the campaign run? And we ran it for a month. And we had 5 responses from creators, which was obviously not great. And the majority of those didn't end up doing anything for us. In fact, technically, we did not have a single sale run through our Creator Connections campaign. We sold nothing. But we did have a magazine in the pool industry that connected with us, and they ran a complete expose on our brand. We did a podcast interview. They're running, affiliate links, to our stuff. And we actually ended up setting them up so that they run it through our associates link. So they didn't do anything with Creator Connections. We set up something outside of it. And that actually ended up working out really well for us. And we did find one other influencer through that as well. And we're also working with them, not through Creator Connections. So that was our initial foray. And I didn't feel like it was really much of a success. So I just kind of let it go and never came back to it. And we just ran a new campaign, which is just starting, and it's actually been pretty successful so far. So, I can talk some more about that, but, you guys kind of, I don't know what your experience has been with the platform.
Yeah. And I think we got really excited about this. And we had a couple of clients come to us and wanted us to basically run some campaigns for them, which we did. And we kind of ran into the same issues. So a couple of them, the first one is that surprisingly, at least through the Amazon connections, was there wasn't as many influencers as you would think that raised their hand and were interested. And that was even with, because the approach that we took to it, at least in the testing phase, was so two things. One, we looked at, hey, what's our break even on this? And we were willing to give a commission that was up to our break even, because I mean, it's a win-win all the way around, at least in order to get it kicked off. We wanted to start fairly aggressive. And then we had a fairly healthy budget, I think, $3,000, $4,000, or $5,000. And just unfortunately, it didn't feel like the creators were really, either they didn't understand what Amazon was doing with Amazon Connections. I think that there's still a lot of work that Amazon has to do on kind of education and communication to the creators, and understanding like that they're getting that extra commission and those types of things. And then the other thing that you mentioned, where we probably made a mistake before we hit recording, which was we didn't make the time frame long enough. I think we probably set a few weeks or maybe a month for the time frame, and that's probably part of the reason why we didn't have a whole lot of interest. The other issue that we ran into, and I'd be curious to hear, Mike, what experience you have with this, or Matt, if you've got any input on this, is that we didn't really feel like we had a whole lot of control over what got posted by those influencers. Right. So that was a downside compared to what we ended up using and what we currently use as a solution, which is using Join Brands has a specific campaign for posting videos on Amazon, where you can have influencers that are Amazon influencers to post directly. So at least at that time, that's what we've been using, but always looking at, Amazon's always improving different programs like this. And so it definitely pays to give it a second chance if it hasn't worked for some reason. So that's kind of been my experience. I'd be curious, Mike, to hear your, or Matt, if you want to chime in here, if you've got anything to share around what kind of control you have over what gets posted, or how you kind of give direction to influencers before something goes live using Amazon Connections.
Sure. Have you, Matt? I don't know if you've utilized Creator Connections, or if you've got any clients that have.
No, actually, where I'm going to ask you a question is how all of this compares to a platform like Join Brands. But go ahead and answer John's question. We'll get to that.
Sure. So I would say, in terms of the control that you have over content, you definitely have less control, for sure. Also, one drawback, and it probably would, if you were working with Amazon influencers through some other platform like Join Brands or something, I would imagine you still kind of run into this a little bit. And that is, Amazon influencers, one of the things that I think you need to pay attention to as a brand when you're working in this space is that the ones that know what they're doing are, well, in fact, I'll give you an example. One of the creators that responded to this most recent campaign that we ran, they responded back to indicate that they had done some research on our brand and our listings, and had determined that there was space for additional videos on our listing. And so they were interested. And we've heard that once before from another influencer that we work with, who's an Amazon influencer. And so what that essentially means is, there's at the top of your listing, where you've got the video carousel, there's only so many videos that can be highlighted there. And so if you've filled that whole carousel, whether with your own videos or with your videos plus other influencers who are posting on there, then there's no more room up there. And the only way to clear space up there for an influencer would be to remove one of your own videos, because any other influencers that are already on there, you have no control over them. You can't remove them. They're just there. So when you're doing a campaign like this, one of the things that comes into play is there space on your listings for influencers to post? Because one of the things that they like to do is they want to post a video and know it's going to go right on your listing. And as long as they do a really good job with it, it's going to sell the product really well, and they're going to make commissions on that. But the thing you have to think through is, how many of those sales might you generate without that video? Like, because essentially they're potentially taking some of your sales and just applying a commission to it that maybe wouldn't have happened otherwise. If it had been your video that the customer viewed and then they decided to buy, you don't pay the commission. But on the flip side, if they watch the influencer video, then you're going to pay that commission. So, weigh the pros and cons of that, in terms of how you see it. But that's the way that functions. And so they want to be in that space. So understand that if your listings don't have any space up there, if you're using up all of that space, at some point you run out of opportunity for those influencers to jump on there. And unless they've got really big followings off platform that they want to advertise to, you probably aren't going to get much response from them. But again, you don't have a lot of control over the content. They pretty much dictate it. Many of the influencers that we've spoken with, they, at least on the front end of it, they're not interested in allowing us to repurpose the content. So we're having conversations with them to ask, what additional, can we pay a little additional to have access to that content and whatnot, which I do think is probably a little bit different maybe than working off platform sometimes.
Yeah. And that's a great point. What I would say, and I should clarify with Join Brands, what our kind of primary and secondary goals were there, because I think that, it's not one tool is good or bad. I think that they're just different tools for different things. So our primary objective with Join Brands for those clients was getting user generated content. So getting videos that showed, real people using the product that fit the demographic in our target market and those types of things. So for that part of it, Join Brands worked fantastic for us for a couple of different reasons. The first one was because working directly with influencers, if it's a long-term thing, recruiting good influencers, getting them the product, and then seeing which ones actually produce good videos, quite frankly, is a lot more work than you would think it would be. Yeah. So, kind of creating your own solution was a pretty heavy lift. The nice thing about Join Brands is they basically have a curated community. They train the influencers how to post. You get a guaranteed post. The other thing that I really liked out of it was that because of the way the agreement is set up, when you're working with that influencer, you own that video. So they have all kinds of different channels. So, you can do TikTok, you can do Instagram, whatever. They have an Amazon specific channel. That's what we ended up using. And yes, they post as a part of that. They post on Amazon. They can post on their other social media, but then you get that video. So if I want to make that into a video ad to use on Amazon, I can do that. If I want to use it as a Facebook ad, if I want to put it on my website, like I have permissions to use that video as the brand. It becomes a brand asset. I can use it anywhere I want.
Right.
So that was a huge advantage when you start looking at generating high quality user generated content at an affordable rate. We found it worked really well for that. Now, if you look at actually driving sales with it through an affiliate relationship, I would say, at least based on, that wasn't our goal for it. So I would say that there's probably other, Amazon Creator Connections or something along that lines might be a better tool. If you already have UGC, especially on your Amazon listing, and you're like, hey, I want to produce more of looking for affiliate relationships to drive additional sales and be able to track that directly.
So in Join Brands, you said that your goal was UGC. I know that that's how Join Brands started, was UGC, but now they have this whole influencer side. So when you're creating your campaign in Join Brands specifically, are you able to say my goal here is UGC as opposed to my goal here is driving sales with an influencer, or is it a mixed bag of what kind of responses that you get?
That's a great question. And again, what we ran into or what we experienced there was that Join Brands is all UGC. So you're supposed to be communicating. you're supposed to be working with those influencers via their platform. They obviously don't want you essentially sidestepping their platform, because you're paying a platform fee. And quite frankly, we found they did a very good job of connecting with influencers that did a good job for us across, we used it for, 3 or 4 brands over the last 6 months. And as far as generating that UGC, it did a very good job for us. But there wasn't really an affiliate relationship there. So when it comes to the affiliate piece, I don't know, maybe things have changed. I haven't looked recently, but from what I remember, I don't think that there really is an affiliate option. They're really focused on UGC and different types of UGC. So whether that's an unboxing, whether that's, an initial or like showing how the product is used. There's a few other different kind of options in there that you can get for different types of UGC. So they do a good job with that. But as far as the affiliate stuff, I don't think that they really have an option for that, or at least they didn't as of a couple months ago on their platform.
And on the flip side of that, Mike, it feels like Creator Connections is far more the affiliate content, or not content creator, but like the actual affiliate. I'm sorry, the influencer part of the side of things, where they're promoting it to their audience, they're getting a commission. Is that what Creator Connections is?
Yeah, for sure. So one thing about Creator Connections that's interesting is that, as opposed to most programs that Amazon runs, where they're very closed, like there's all this, TOS that, that kind of clamps down on how you can operate, right? Creator Connections feels a little more open. And maybe that's just because it's a new program, and they haven't really clamped down on it much yet. But so it is very much affiliate focused, influencer focused. It's not really UGC necessarily, but there is no reason that you can't negotiate with, the influencers to have that content be UGC that you could repurpose, right? I mean, I would say that even though we haven't yet reached an agreement with any of our influencers for that UGC content to be able to be repurposed, I'm nearly 100% sure that at least some of the creators that we're going to connect with here, we're going to be able to get some repurposable content out of them, even if it's just, a little extra, 50 or $100 or a couple $100 if it's good quality, to use. I would also say that if you've got a really good customer list, then maybe that's irrelevant. Go to your customer list for UGC and then use the influencers for the affiliate, type stuff, with Creator Connections and whatnot. Getting back to the differential between the two campaigns that we ran. So the first campaign, of course, in one sense was kind of a flop. In another sense, it was useful because we did connect with, the Pool Magazine, and we got this other influencer who's done some good work for us. The second campaign that we just launched, the reason that we launched it, honestly, was because Josh Hadley had done a presentation on utilizing Creator Connections. It was I think it was a hack on maybe Kevin King's hack contest, and it got me to thinking about how we ran our initial campaign and where we made the mistakes. And so a few of the things that he talked about was, one, making sure that the commission percentage is high enough. Now remember that this is a bonus commission on top of what they're already earning through Amazon Associates. But, the higher you can make that commission reasonably, the more response you're going to get from it. But I would say, as John kind of, hinted at earlier, there's a combination here. You can offer a decent commission and have it still not be really very valuable to the creator. You can offer a decent budget and still have it not be all that, enticing to a creator if the time horizon isn't long enough. So if you set the campaign up for 3 weeks or a month or whatever it is, they can only earn commissions for that length of time. Well, it's just like anything else, right? Like, why do people sell info products? Because you create it once and you just keep selling it. Well, a video a review video for a product that's affiliate based is that same way. It's basically an info product. You created the information to review this, product. You want to be able to sell it forever, ultimately, because that content doesn't go away. Why not keep selling on it? So the longer the campaign, the more time that influencer has to reap additional benefit from the investment that they put in on the front end to create the video. So Josh was basically saying, run it for at least 6 months, maybe longer. And then you're going to have more creators who chime in. But then by doing that, you also may have to make sure that you set the budget high enough so that the influencer looks at it and says, okay, well, yeah, they put it for, 9 months, but the budget was $3,000. Well, I could personally maybe, use up $3,000 in a couple of months. So then I don't get the rest of the benefit. Like the campaign can't continue to run if the budget's used up. So he was just saying, make it long enough, make the commission high enough, and make the budget high enough. So the numbers that we used, we did an 8-month campaign. We set it at 10% commission, and we set it at a $75,000 budget. Now, we're never going to spend 75 grand. That's not going to happen. I guarantee we're not going to come anywhere near that. But you're sending that signal to the influencer that you're in, that you're serious.
Sorry to interrupt, but just out of curiosity, like let's say that at that commission rate, if you did spend that $75,000, are you guys you're profitable on those sales? So even if you did, that'd be fantastic because
I would not complain if I spent the whole $75,000 because at a 10% commission, it's profitable because I'm not spending on PPC, right?
Right.
Like if my tacos is, 15 or 20%, then if I can pay a 10% commission, well, geez, I'll do that all day long because it's more profitable to me than running ads.
Right. And I wanted to emphasize that so that way, anybody who's listening, it's like, oh my gosh, I would never set a $75,000 budget. That would be crazy. But if you look at it and you say, okay, but if I'm setting at a 10% commission and I've got let's say I've got a 20% profit margin, even after giving that commission, well, you'd spend to the moon if you,
all day long.
It's like any other ad platform.
Yeah, for sure. So, crunch the numbers, and see what makes sense in terms of the commission percentage. Josh's suggestion was that you try to do at least 10%, maybe 15%. You could go higher if you want, and if you've got the margin to cover it, but certainly 10 or 15% seems like maybe the sweet spot. And what I can say is so far, our campaign has been live for, I don't know, I think it's like 5 days, something like that. We have 26 responses from creators, whereas the initial campaign had 5 over the entire month. We never got any more than 5. Most of them didn't result in anything. We did not sell anything through the initial campaign. In the first 5 days, we have sold $1,000 worth of product so far, which isn't massive, but understand that the majority of the creators that we've connected with don't have any content yet. We still haven't sent them samples. They don't have. So essentially those sales that we generated are only from these deal sites, and blog sites that they don't have samples. Like they just throw up products on their site all day long. Those sales that we've generated already are just from that. Has nothing to do with video content or anything. So I think those sales are going to increase considerably. One of the things that we did, and this is another recommendation of Josh, is that within our post with the campaign description, we put a link in there for creators to apply, let's say, for our sample and support program. So essentially, they can apply to the campaign. That doesn't necessarily mean that they get samples, nor does it mean that they get any support from us necessarily. They just apply and they can do whatever they want, right? They can go buy our product and review it. But if they want free samples and or support from our brand to push that forward, then they need to go register through this link. And it's just a Google form. It asks them about, what platforms are they on? How many followers do they have? How many video views do they have? We get their email address and their name. And a few other pieces of information. And so through that, it not only gives us another way to connect with them so that we don't have to connect only through creator connections, and then we can more easily connect with them down the road, but it also tells us more about what platforms they're on, how much influence they have. We also ask them, and I think this is a useful question, I think most of them are probably being pretty honest about it, is we ask them how many Amazon sales did they generate in the last month? And we had We've had responses from creators anywhere from, I sold 10 to 50 units last month to I sold 15,000 units last month on Amazon. So, we've got a really wide range of, let's say, production capacity, from these creators. But I think we're going to get some good content out of it. And we've probably got at least, I would say, 4 creators out of that really have some juice, that I think are going to push some sales for us. So I'm pretty happy so far with the production of the campaign.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you're structuring that. One question. So one lesson that we kind of learned when we did a bunch of testing with this last year was when you're working with creators, well, what we found was, so rather than just sending them a free product up front, we had them order off of Amazon. And then, whether, they were doing the, or promoting our product or whatever, as for an affiliate commission or, for some sort of flat rate fee, that they didn't get reimbursed for that product until the video went live. Because I can tell you, we tried it the other way as far as, hey, send you the product. And I would say that probably 80% of our influencers took way longer or never posted a video.
Yeah. So I'm interested to hear I know what my thoughts are on that. What do you think about that, Matt? Like, what's your thought as to whether you would want to do the, buy and get a rebate, back after the fact, as long as you've done the video, or just flat out give the samples up front?
I think I've never used a platform like this before. We have an audience, and the only thing that I've ever used really the audience for is for UGC, and I get a lot of that. So, with the new brand that we're getting ready to launch, I'm definitely going to do it this way. And what I do know about the people that we've engaged in our group, to ask them to do more, not just like an unboxing video that we didn't ask for, but like to actually create something for us. I also dealt with that same thing where we would send them the product up front, and even though it was our own audience in our group, about a third of them didn't respond, and that was the last time I heard of them. So I can definitely see the value in having the product shipped after they create the video. That's for sure. And even, like I said, even in our own audience, that would have helped a lot and negated a lot of the issues that we had. It's really just a matter of setting the priorities and setting it up in the front what your expectations are. We didn't do a very good job of that. I don't think these platforms, I feel like, do a much better job of setting the expectations of what you're expecting as the brand owner and what the influencer / content creator is supposed to do.
Yeah. So,
Mike, before we move on from that, there is one other question that I had, to one of the things that you said, which was, you talked about that 10 to 15% commission. Now, your average kind of product, is, I think, is fairly expensive. It's $50 to $100. So their commission, doing some public math, is probably, like $5 on that product.
Yeah. I'm
curious, did Josh say anything about it, or what are your thoughts? Actually, either one of you, if, hey, maybe I've got a product that's only $20, is 10% enough if they're only getting a $2 commission on that product?
So my thoughts on that, and some of this comes back again, also wraps into what we were just talking about a second ago. I think absolutely every product and every kind of product vertical is different in terms of how you're going to end up setting this up. So, for instance, like on the free sample issue, we have a number of products in our line that are all used together, right? We've got a pool pole, and then we got a bunch of tools. The tools are useless without the pole. The pole is useless without the tools. Now, technically, a pool owner could have their own pole, so they don't have to buy our pole. They could buy our tools and attach it to their pole, and vice versa. But because all of our products are kind of used together, it makes a lot of sense. If I'm going to have somebody do a review of a net, then I want them to also have the pole, because then the person gets to see both the pole and the net. Otherwise, they're not seeing our pole. So it's to our benefit to have them using both products together versus individually. And so part of it is, if we require them to purchase the product on the front end, many of them, are going to go with our lesser priced products, because they don't want to get stuck with, like, our pool pole is $200. They don't want to get stuck with a $200 item. Now, granted, it's Amazon. They can return it, there's a lot of that in there, but still there's a little bit of a fear factor there. Like, what if I get hung with this product? So if your product is a lower priced item, then there's a lower threshold there. So you probably could more easily get away with buy the product and we'll refund it after the fact when you give us a video. I don't know that we can get away with that quite as easily, especially if we want them to be using the pole in conjunction with at least one of our other products. So we kind of I don't feel like we have a choice in that area. I think other brands that maybe are selling lower price items probably could get away with going the other route. The other thing I was going to say with Matt is, you said you had maybe a third that didn't do the video. One of the things I think that a brand should consider is, can we afford for a certain percentage of the free samples that we go out to not result in anything if the ones that we do get something from generate enough sales for us? Like, is it in the end, is it going to be better? Are we going to get more content because we'll get more creators respond if we just say we're going to give the free product? Now, investigate, don't just give it to everybody. Like, that's why we've got the form to apply for free samples and support, because then we can ask questions. We can get, what are your other platforms? We can go look and see what kind of engagement do they get, so we're doing our homework. I'm not just going to send my free samples to anybody, but if I'm going to send them without having them buy them first, then I'm going to research them, really well. But I do think then, coming back to your question, John, in terms of like, well, what if you got a $20 product versus you got a $100 product? In terms of the commissions and whatnot, do you offer a 10%? Do you offer a 5%? Do you offer a 20%? Where do you fall in that? A lot of that comes down to also, what is the size of the audience that they can sell to? So for instance, a number of the creators that have come to us, again, we sell pool products. There's only a certain percentage of households that actually have a pool in the US. So no matter what, unless we're connecting with an influencer that only does pool products, and so therefore their audience is all pool owners, we have to take into account there's only a small percentage of their audience that actually has any use for our product. So we've got a lot. In fact, every single influencer that we're working with or going to work with here, it isn't a pool audience. They just have an audience of users that trust them. But they own a pool, and a certain percentage of their audience owns a pool. And so therefore a certain percentage of their audience is useful to us, but we have to take that into account and say, okay, maybe only 5% of their audience owns a pool. Well, if they have a pretty small audience, then is it worth my time and giving them samples and whatnot to walk forward with that? Probably not. But if they've got 1 million followers on these other platforms and stuff, even if only 5% of them own pools, that's still big enough for us. The same thing is true from the influencer side. So in terms of your percentage, if virtually every person that watches their videos could potentially use this product, like it's a kitchen gadget, right? Like it's a silicone spatula, right? Everybody's got a kitchen. Everybody cooks food. Everybody could use a spatula probably. So if that's what I'm promoting in my video, I don't need quite as big of a percentage or quite as much dollar amount per sale if I can potentially sell to the entire audience of people that are watching my videos. Whereas if I'm doing a pool product, I might need that dollar amount per sale to be high because only 5% of my audience, is going to potentially buy that product. So I think that's where you have to think through, do I have a higher price product? Could I offer a lesser percentage and it still be okay because the dollar amount is high enough? Or do I have a lesser price product? Maybe I need a higher percentage, but it's going to be high volume, so maybe I don't. There's a lot of calculation going on there, and you're probably not going to know unless you just test it. Yeah. But I would start lower. Like, don't start at a high percentage because then, you don't know. Start at a lower percentage and see what kind of response rate you get.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that, you do need to have different tools in the toolbox and how you approach this depending on, what product you're using for this and what your brand's focus is and kind of where that price point is. Because the other thing that I would add to that as well is that, if you have a consumable product, you might want to be super aggressive with that.
Right.
Because,
Absolutely.
you could offer a 50% commission up front on that first order. And if your average, lifetime customer orders your product 10, 20 times, well, that's a great deal
Yeah,
for you as the
absolutely.
brand. So
Yeah.
take into account, what your brand and your price point, and also think about it from like, and I think that's a great point, Mike. Think about it from that influencer's perspective too, because you want it to be a win-win relationship together, that it makes sense to promote that product. Because the more that they see the benefits of that and they see the cash coming into their account, that's huge motivation for them to continue to support your brand.
Yeah. And that's a big deal, right? Like, I mean, once you form this relationship, why not form a relationship that you're going to be able to continue with and get additional UGC down the road and maybe do some additional promotions and things like that? Like, I mean, this could be a long-term relationship that produces a lot of sales for you over time. Make sure that you build that relationship right from the start, and move it in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, I think we talked a lot about kind of UGC and influencers, and given I think some really great insight into, and some ideas of how to make Amazon creator connections work. With that, maybe Matt or Mike, you want to leave one tip for our listeners that are, looking at either, finding influencers for affiliates, or want to get more user generated content.
Well, I'll give Matt the last word. So I guess the biggest thing that I would say is don't give up on it. If you tested some of these platforms and you didn't really have good result, we say this all the time, but don't make the assumption that just because you tried it once and it failed, that it's not of any value to you. Take the time to be introspective about it and evaluate, why did it fail? Did it fail because your product isn't a good fit for this? Did it fail because you were advertising to the wrong influencer base? Did it fail because you didn't offer a big enough budget, a long enough time, horizon to make money, a large enough commission? There's a million reasons why it might have failed, and most of them are probably something that you could fix and rerun the campaign and do much better. And I mean, we're a prime example of that. I mean, we're at the early stages of this latest campaign, but already I would consider it relatively a success versus the first one. And we didn't really change a whole lot. We just made a few tweaks to it, and I think it's going to prove, very useful for us. So that'd be my recommendation, is just don't give up on it.
What I'll say is what I hope that our audience does after every Tactics Tuesday. I'm going to go try this. I'm going to go create a creator connections campaign, and I'm going to see how it works out for a brand that I'm working with right now. So by the next time we talk, I'll have an update on how it went. But I'm excited to sidestep a lot of the things that Mike did wrong in his first campaign from the tips that we gave in this Tactics Tuesday. So I'm going to go try it. And I hope that our audience does too.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I think that's a great challenge to our listeners, that if you have tried Amazon Creator Connections in the past and it didn't work out for you, I think, there's some great tips here. And I encourage you to either, if you've never used it, go give it a shot, set up that campaign. And if you, or if you have tried it in the past and didn't work out for you, give it another shot.